Hello and good morning, evening or afternoon, depending on when you are watching this latest episode of Edie's Susty Talk. This is our series of video interviews to keep us all feeling a little bit more connected during COVID-19 and beyond. And I'm delighted to have on the call today, hot on the heels of the publication of the Transport Decarbonisation Plan, Steve Tainton from Wincanton. He is their Head of Sustainability and CSR. Thank you so much for your time, Steve. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, indeed.
And whereabouts in the world are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Bristol in the UK, and we're a UK-based company primarily, so my role is a national one, so I tend to travel around a little bit as well. So Bristol today.
Great. And I guess I've been looking up about Wincanton for the call, but would you mind just briefly introducing the company for the benefit of those who might not be familiar?
Sure. Wincanton is the largest British supply chain company. We work with a huge number of UK brands, which you may well recognise, from grocery to public sector to construction. So a very wide range of sectors and activities, everything from large warehouses to transport operations to two-man premium home delivery services. So a very big spectrum of supply chain activity on behalf of our customers.
And we can get into what it means to decarbonise each of those different moving parts in our call today, but I think it'd be good to hear about your role a little bit first. So how is sustainability and CSR really set up, and where does it sit within the business?
So I've been in this role for I guess 10 years on and off. The role originally started out as an environment role. It's kind of a classic environmental management type role. We brought in the carbon reporting. We had an environment strategy 10 years ago that needed to be implemented, and that's when I joined Wincanton. But over time, we've seen the environment agenda turn into a sustainability agenda, and much less about pollution control and about incident management and those kind of things, and much more about impacts on the environment, whether it's from waste, or whether it's from carbon emissions or air quality. That obviously is a big area for us, all of which are pretty much related to us using diesel fuel. So nearly all our pollution control, our emissions, our air quality issues come from using diesel to drive our delivery operations for our customers. So it's very much become much more about the emissions from diesel than managing the diesel itself, which we do, much more business as usual. It's just what you do as a transport company. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And I wanted to come on to that really. So we're calling shortly after the company has updated its ESG strategy. I think we could be here all day if we talk about the difference between CSR and ESG and how companies use them. So I wanted to talk really about some of the stuff that's included in there. So looking at, as you say, tackling some of that diesel, looking towards the UK's legally binding net zero target. So I guess just can we have a look at some of those targets from the point of view of how can a company with varied fleets define and deliver net zero? And I presume electrification plays a big role in that.
So yes, electrification will certainly be a big part of that over time. I think the important thing is to kind of wind back slightly. So just picking up your point about CSR versus ESG, I think 3 years ago, we would have talked about CSR, corporate social responsibility, making sure that we are a company that is acting responsibly in a whole range of different spheres, be they social or environment. But over the last 3 years, we've seen this ESG idea, this idea of environment, social, but this governance thing. So in other words, making sure that your environmental and social programs are built into your business strategy, and that you are actively managing that business strategy against a set of deliverables that are given visibility at all levels of your management structure. So that's the G part is really important. And so when we looked at our environment strategy and our social strategy, we felt that an ESG strategy was a better way to frame it. And when we looked at what our ESG strategy needed to be, we felt that we had a lot of customers who were moving towards net zero commitments and social commitments around the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so we were looking at that and saying, well, you can't really untangle E and S and the governance. They're all, crucial parts of a three-legged stool. And so we looked at that and said, well, where are our customers going? Where is the UK going? Where is the world going? And so that became the kind of framework in which we were working. And what we felt was that there are a lot of technologies that we are going to need to use to decarbonise that we don't really have full visibility of yet. We're not sure whether hydrogen will play a part. We think it will, but we don't know in what form or when. And so it's really hard to set a very concrete target with a baseline and then annual interim targets and all these other checkpoints that you might have. Really difficult for us to do that because we are a contract supply chain company, and so we rely on our customers and their ambition to help us understand what they want us to do for them. So we can't just go out and set a target, because without our customers supporting that target, we can't deliver that. We are working very, very closely with in partnership and in collaboration with customers and partners all the time as a contract company. So when we looked at it, we said, well, what are our customers doing? What's the UK doing? What do we have to be able to deliver by when to be in the game, to be working with our customers and being a supply chain partner that they want to work with? So to a certain extent, our target was a tops-down target. And we looked at the British Retail Consortium, and we looked at the UK, and we talked to Logistics UK, our industry body, and we felt that the target we set ourselves, which was to be net zero by 2040, was a reasonable and relatively aggressive, but reasonably achievable within the limit of the knowledge we had today, goal for us to set ourselves. And so and then when we looked at our individual sectors, we felt that sectors like premium home delivery, digital fulfillment, which potentially uses smaller vehicles, last mile type delivery, could be the earliest to go in terms of the technology being available, electrification, for example, as you mentioned. And then we also felt that when you look at heavier trucks, which is a big part of our business in our other sectors, they would be further down the line and would be something that we would have to come to as the technology evolved and became commercially viable. Now there are some things we can do today which we may want to touch on, like HVO, drop-in diesel, like biomethane. We can do things like that, and we've worked with those fuels, but in terms of full decarbonisation, electrification and hydrogen seem to be where we're headed, and we are working really hard to kind of see where that's going and making sure we're connected to those programs. And then because it's a net zero target, there will be emissions that are really hard to eliminate, particularly on heavy trucks in the short term. And so we anticipate that some level of offsetting will be necessary in the short term and in the longer term as we look at each of those individual sectors. But again, it depends on customer appetite and exactly what our customer's value proposition to their customer is going to be as to how we deploy that.
Got it. And I guess it's timely then that we're talking, because you mentioned it's hard to draw up a strategy when, you've got, I think you said, the limit of policy knowledge. Yeah. And since this has happened, we have had the Transport Decarbonisation Plan, and then just today, we're recording this on the 17th of August, the hydrogen strategy, which in my opinion has a bit more on heating than on transport, but there you go. So I'd love to hear what you made of that Transport Decarbonisation Plan. And there's some stuff in there that you mentioned. So there's a target for phasing out the sale of new petrol and diesel HGVs by 2040, and some other technology supports there. So yeah, from a logistics point of view, what did that mean for you?
Well, I mean, I have to admit, I am one of those people who's read every single word of the strategy. So although it's 200+ pages, I did read it all because it's crucial to what we're doing, obviously. I think there are some gaps. I think when you look at the freight section, the road freight section particularly, it talks about oh, we haven't really got an alternative fuel strategy, but we'll publish that later. We haven't really got a hydrogen strategy, but we'll publish that later, which they've done today, as you mentioned. And so there were some gaps there. It's like, well, it doesn't really help. We still don't really know where that's all going to go, and whether we should be investing in alternative fuels until we can see where hydrogen electrification goes. I think it was a little bit, there were some areas around infrastructure, electric vehicle, commercial vehicle charging infrastructure for electrification, which I think you know, that is one of the big challenges that we face with electrification, is understanding, you know, how to build that infrastructure. You know, where's it going to go? How much power do you need? Where do you get that power from? All those questions. You know, who pays for it? Does it have to be publicly available to other operators? Is there going to be a public network, or is it all going to be managed by the people who are operating the transport services, etc., etc. So there's a lot of questions around the infrastructure piece, which I just don't think the strategy even really attempted to answer. I think it was an area that was left largely open. So I think there were some good things in there. I think there was some good stuff around personal transport, electrification of cars, you know, stuff like that was interesting. The development of a net zero city was interesting. I think, but again, a lot of the discussion of that in the document was around passenger transport, public transport, personal transport, not a lot about freight in the city and how freight is going to be moved around in the future. So I think, again, as a supply chain operator, it maybe didn't give us many answers, although it did pose a few questions. So I suppose that's a good thing. But yeah, so I don't know what your thoughts were, but that's kind of where it felt to me. But
yeah, I'm definitely not an expert, but I was on a panel with experts earlier, and they said the same thing essentially on charging point infrastructure, that there's clarity there that they want to do it, but it is individual focused, and there's also the question of where the funding's coming from. Sure. And just this feeling, I think, that on EVs particularly, there was expressed a view that the private sector is just going to have to do a lot of that, with or without the guidance from government.
Yeah,
is essentially what was said.
And I think when people think about electric vehicles, they think about cars, you know, for obvious reasons. It's a very big proportion of the vehicles on the road, and very understandably, and it's a technology that's available today. Wincanton is electrifying its company car fleet. We have targets to do that. It's something we can do, so we are doing it, and we can make those inroads. It's also a very good engagement piece. So when you look at, you know, if you've got 500 company car drivers, then those 500 drivers, if they're all driving electric, they are all hopefully evangelizing on the fun of driving electric and the low emission impact of it, and so that persuading other people to go electric in their private lives and that. So I think it's, as a change management tool, electrification of company cars is a really strong thing. It's a really good thing to do. But the problem is that commercial vehicle charging is not the same as car charging, and it has a different user profile. It has a different challenge, has a different speed requirement, you know, in terms of utilization of assets, shift changeover, quick charging. When you've got a very large truck that might be electric, trying to charge that quickly is going to require an enormous amount of power, which you need to find from somewhere. And so how that all works is something that we are, you know, beginning to really understand more about, and to really start to think about. And I think that what's going to happen with transport and warehousing is that the warehouse is going to be the source of your transport energy.
Right.
So you know, you need to understand, well, how do we need, what else do we need to put in our warehouse estate to power our vehicles in the future if we're going to electrify, or even if we're going to use hydrogen? You know, where does that hydrogen come from? How do you get it to the vehicle? You know, is it a public network, or is it a private back to base kind of network? All those questions are what we're wrestling with to deliver this net zero program that we are going to embark on over the next 20 years. So.
And you mentioned there's different infrastructure there, but obviously there's different vehicles. And I heard last year in the EV100 report, a lot of businesses said, like, we'd love to have some of these heavier vehicles electrified right away, but there's not enough models on the market and at the right cost for us as well. So I'm presuming that some of that is carrying on into 2021.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think some of the traditional, I'm going to call them traditional OEMs, on the basis that they've got a large history with diesel. There are other OEMs that are making electric, and they've never made anything else. And they maybe don't have quite the same. Maybe they're a bit more nimble, but they don't have the history of making the vehicle, so they don't have that ability to churn out new models that the big OEMs do. So I think we're seeing more availability of heavier weighted trucks, and I think there are some OEMs that we traditionally work with who are offering us vehicles over the next 1, 2, 3 years where we genuinely think we can bring heavier trucks on fleet. I think one of the things that, as the logistics industry, we need to grasp is that it isn't. I don't think it's going to be simply a question of saying, well, we will swap all our diesel vehicles for exactly the same thing, but just powered by electric. I think we may need to say, well, we need to change our operating model to accommodate when you have to charge these vehicles. We have to accommodate the fact that maybe they don't carry as much because they've got carrying a load of heavy batteries around. Maybe we need to spec a slightly heavier vehicle so that we get the payload we need that we would have got with a smaller diesel vehicle because they have a different weight profile. So all those tweaks to our operating model, may give us benefits, or they may give us slight operating penalties, which we need to build into our cost models. And it isn't just about the cost of the vehicle. As I say, the cost of the infrastructure is also crucial. So you've got cost of infrastructure, cost of vehicle, changes to your operating model. All of those need to be done in a smooth way as we move away from diesel, so that we don't drop the ball for our customer. Basically, our customer wants their deliveries on time, and we need to continue to do that. So it's a very, very difficult challenge. And if you then overlay things like driver shortage, if it takes 10 electrics to every 9 diesels, that means you've got to find an extra driver from somewhere. Well, at the moment we can't always fill the seats for our diesel trucks, let alone any extra demand. So the logistics or the supply chain industry has a lot of challenges that we are aiming to be a leader in meeting, basically.
I don't really want to end it on a negative note, and I wanted to come on to that bit about the customers quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah, cool.
You mentioned that it's great change management really to have electric car fleet, in that you've then got an army really of people on the ground testing this in real time and engaging in their lives as well. So I wanted to get a feel on what that's like being a logistics provider, how that can engage end user brands. And you mentioned they're like retailers, grocery, things like that, and they're increasingly not only setting net zero strategies, but in a lot of cases bringing the deadlines forward a little bit as well. So I wanted to look at the opportunities of engagement in that way.
Yeah, so we believe that setting a net zero target goal was not only the right thing to do, given the challenges we're all facing, but was also what our customers expected. And we felt that if we didn't have a clear, realistic goal for net zero, achieving net zero, our customers would start to say, well, we don't really want to work with a partner who doesn't have that commitment and that vision about how they're going to do it. And so we really felt that that by going out with that message, we would unlock a lot of conversations with both existing customers and new customers. And I think that has been the case. I mean, the number of calls, we announced this in, I don't know, May or whenever it was exactly. And in May, and since then, we've had call after call, not only from customers, but from, partners, from suppliers, from colleagues inside Wincanton asking, how do I get involved? Because I'm really passionate about the environment. I really want to, it's been a really strong connection to our colleagues as well, which is fantastic. So I think, if anybody was hesitating to set a target, I would advise just do it. Just do it. Even if you don't know exactly how you're going to achieve it, that's the best kind of target, because, you will find ways to innovate and deliver the things you need to do if you know that you've committed to doing something by a certain date. It does give you that impetus and that drive to have the conversation with the customer, to find those customers that really want to work with you. and really build those collaborative partnerships to deliver it, because it is going to be about partnership. One company isn't going to be an expert in all these new technologies. You are going to have to build strong collaborations and a lot of innovation partners, so that you can offer them that kind of test platform for their technology that maybe helps them take it to scale, for example. So absolutely, really important thing was to set the target, and the number of conversations we've had has gone up significantly in the last 3 months since we did that. So.
Well, that's great news, and I'm sure we can look a bit more at the delivery milestones as they progress. But yeah, for today, Steve, I think that's all we have time for. So thank you so much for your time.
Not at all. Not at all. It was a pleasure.